Welcome to the Select Star Podcast, your resource for innovative technology, developer topics, and more. Here's your host, Margot McCabe from the HarperDB team.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to the Select Star Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we have a guest from Ori Industries. His name is José Domingos. He's going to tell us in a little bit, a bit more about who he is and what he does, but we're super excited. Ori is one of our partners here at HarperDB, and we've been working on some exciting stuff with them and have a lot of overlap in the tech space. So thanks, José, for joining us.
Hey, hello, Margot. And yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Just as a brief introduction, I'm José Domingos. I'm the VP of Solution Engineering at Ori Industries. I joined Ori a couple of years ago on an adventure. This is truly an adventure to as I see to change the world of computing. And previously I was a systems architect at BT. I was responsible for all of the monitoring systems of BT for networks and IT. So it was a job of a 24/7 job at British Telecom in the UK. So Ori is distributed edge cloud company. We effectively enable application workloads to run over a single control plane and a single management plane, and we securely connect those workloads, and we do this across edge infrastructure, distributed compute from on-prem compute to multi-access edge compute to public clouds. And we're based in London as a company, and we've been operating for about 3 years, just over 3 years. And our ethos is to effectively supercharge digital transformation for our customers. And in many ways with partners like HarperDB, and we aim to make the deployment of workloads simple, reliable, secure, and that's what brought us together, really, Harper and Ori.
Yeah. So if you've been following HarperDB at all, anyone listening, you know that we do talk about edge computing a lot, and so I think that's why this partnership and us finding each other and kind of working together makes sense, because we've been talking for several years and writing about and talking with big companies, small companies about how moving your data out closer to the end user, out to the edge, is a great way to reduce latency and complexity, improve performance, reduce costs, things like that. And so it seems like this year, I mean, it maybe started picking up a lot more last year, but this year it really seems like now edge computing is becoming like, I don't know if you guys feel the same, José, but a few years ago, I think people were like, I get it, but I'm not quite ready yet. And this year it's really becoming front and center for a lot of companies' goals and initiatives is to utilize edge computing. So I think it's an exciting time to be in the space, to say the least.
Yes, absolutely. It's the interesting thing, as you say, is that in this last couple of years, things came together, and many companies, of course, have used the fundamental shift in the market that happened due to the pandemic, and unfortunately, not talk about it. We cannot talk about that shift has enabled many companies to reconsider not just how what were the most fundamental technologies they had, but also had to introduce new technologies at a much greater pace, and therefore that's where I see edge compute coming along to support that, and all the rate of innovation we've seen is incredible, and the pace is incredible.
Awesome. Yeah. So And that kind of all ties into one of the other topics that we wanted to focus on today, decentralized computing, which really does overlap a lot with, distributing out to the edge. But before we jump a little more into that, I'd love to hear in your words, how would you define decentralized computing? Why is it important? Why are companies focused on it? Things like that.
Yeah, so actually, to me, the decentralized computing is not a new concept, right? Computing exists now everywhere, and I kind of like to think it's like a cycle. First, we had highly centralized compute, and then we had the mainframes, which were again highly centralized compute. Then came the PC, and it kind of changed to more decentralized. And then came cloud computing and effectively the public clouds. When the public clouds came, a couple of things had happened as well. The network cloudification was also in place. You had MPLS clouds and all that kind of stuff. So those two things aligned, and there was that the public clouds effectively centralized compute again. And now with this new cycle with edge computing and computing really in being decentralized again, where that computing is sited closer to the consumers and producers of data, then that's where this new area is where I think the cycle is at now, that cycle again of decentralization. Of course, the challenge is that the ease of centralized computing, but the distribution of that computing everywhere. And that's the challenge we have as an industry, is how to make that work.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And the next thing I was going to kind of touch on is that I think a lot of people hear decentralization, and now they think it all ties into blockchain and Web3 and all of that, which is true. But at its core, as you said, decentralization is not necessarily anything new. And I think that there are a lot of proponents for a Web3 world where they want everything to be fully, completely decentralized, but there's definitely pros and cons to that. And I think it's important for companies to do this process in steps and in increments, and maybe part of your computing can be decentralized and part of your organization and not the entire thing. Like you can use a hybrid approach to fulfill your needs. And so I think that's what is interesting about companies like Ori that are helping companies realize is the best way to go about this, and what's going to be the best ultimate end goal for what they're working on. The best way to go about this decentralization. It's not like you just want to do the change overnight, but yeah. So do you have, would you say that this is all very related to blockchain and Web3, or is there like a whole world that you're working in of decentralization where it's outside of that? Because I see a lot about, Web3 and blockchain all over social media and things like that. They're kind of like the hot topics right now, but I think it sometimes expands out of that as well.
Yes. I think if you think, in just very simple terms, the blockchain, the infrastructure of blockchain and the secure peer-to-peer transactions, and Web3 with bringing the power of decentralized computing and microservices, all of this kind of ties in with this world of edge and this world of decentralized compute. And what is required is somehow to be able to turn that compute and turn that infrastructure into something resembling a computing cloud, but this computing cloud, of course, being distributed and made up of a set of locations, and then those locations engaging in peer-to-peer transactions and secure transactions. So what we need is also applications that can work in that way, and that's where again, that's what brought Harper and Ori together, the ability to have applications that actually were natively created to work in that way. And of course, if you can bring the power of the cloud operating model to distributed, the superpowers, I call the superpowers of distributed computing, you know, those capabilities of distributed computing, then you can do something, you know, do something amazing from the point of view of new solutions. For example, we have a partner in blockchain technology that one of their, you know, they build these blockchain networks and they serve banks and so on. But one of their, you know, one of their nightmares is actually, even if they deploy their ledgers on public cloud, is connecting them all and then maintaining that network, right? And each time they need to do this for a customer, then that complexity. And even, you know, even these applications which have been built in the age of microservices have been built to work in a completely distributed fashion. Even them need need more of the operating model of cloud to work with. I think, you know, if we look back again, you know, in the cycles we were talking about, then one of the aspects of that Web3 and eventually blockchain is I think, again, having that compute sited next to the data consumers and producers is a fundamental shift from having that compute centralized in a public cloud, and those superpowers of that edge compute, yeah, those superpowers, the low latency, which enables the ARs and the VRs and the real-time control of machines, the high reliability of that compute that enables that compute to be completely disconnected from the network and, you know, is not relying on some sort of WAN. The high bandwidth of that compute, it can use the high bandwidth of the access networks. Again, doesn't need a backbone network to transport all that data. And the security inherent to data not leaving a premise. All of those superpowers are really what I think Web3 is trying to leverage. Of course, public cloud has its own superpowers, right? The almost infinite scalability, you know, elasticity, as they call it, or telco multi-access edge compute. Being inside the network also has networking superpowers. So all of these compute and applications like Harper that have been developed to make use of this is effectively what I think the promise of Web3 is going to bring.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it and a good explanation. I've heard a couple different kind of definitions, and you know, I've had a conversation with someone about how, you know, what Web3 means for developers, but it's really interesting to hear this from a bit more of an enterprise focus for, as you kind of mentioned, large organizations and how this is going to affect the whole data chain. What would you say, and sorry, my dog is now running around right under me if you can hear. What would you say other than, you know, what other industries would you say are a great fit for looking at this? Like, what industries could greatly benefit right now from looking at decentralized computing? Changing up the way that their data is moving across right now? Are there any industries on the other side that maybe wouldn't benefit as much?
Yeah, I think, you know, going back just a little bit on the, if you're an enterprise or a particular industry, I mean, it's easy to cover straight away industries, entertainment and media. It's easy in the sense that, yes, entertainment and media, you can deliver new experiences, you can deliver new capabilities. For example, you can have in-stadium experiences so that people go to stadiums, but they still are able to see, you know, different angles and different angles of the event and multiple cameras and so on their mobile devices. That's an example of how you can transform the entertainment industry. or gaming, esports, like those industries, I think will eventually become will eventually use edge computing. But I believe that the industries that kind of can leverage it straight away can get the biggest impact out of distributed decentralized computing are enterprises, and in particular enterprises that already have to rely on on-premise compute, already have needs that aren't really addressed by centralized compute and public cloud. And those will be those industries that in a way can leverage those superpowers we've talked about of decentralized compute and edge computing, but also those industries that are effectively struggling with their migrations to public cloud. And I think I found in particular, in particular, we have lots of work on manufacturing industries where the data needs to stay local, the need for control of machinery, not being able to, the amount of data you generate. So manufacturing. Another one is financial industry. A lot of the financial industry, of course, relies on applications and data staying within their domains, and then there's a lot of regulation around it. And the other examples will be retail, where you are constantly trying to transform the retail experiences in store and omni-channel. So again, super important to keep on redefining the retail experience. And that includes, of course, logistics and ensuring that things get to the right place at the right time, and you have good logistics view of your stocks and so on. And another very interesting industry, very quite hard to, but it is healthcare. Quite hard to nail is healthcare. I think fundamentally, there's potentially smart cities, government smart cities, potentially automotive, but I think those are kind of like more niche. I think the others are potentially the highest. And a lot of this is what brought us to HarperDB and effectively data. It's what brought us together, Ori and Harper and data, because all of these that I've talked about had one thing in common, was data, and the amount of data they generate and the amount of data that is required to run those capabilities. Of course, linked with data is artificial intelligence and real-time analytics.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's interesting, as you kind of touched on, how different industries probably have a different process or different best practices of how to make these changes, or of how and why to move towards a decentralized world. But as you said, like with healthcare, there's so many specific technologies to healthcare. It's kind of a difficult industry to kind of break into and to make change in. But I still think each of these industries can greatly benefit as long as they go about it in a correct manner, for lack of better word there. But so just touching on that, like, do you have any tips or like things for people to watch out for, like any downsides of moving towards decentralized computing, or a process? How people can put a process into place if they want to move towards that?
Yes. And this is funny. It's another thing that brought both Harper and Ori is what we have in common regarding this. There are three things, as I think of it very simply: security, control, and visibility. The more I found about Harper, the more I found there was affinity between what you do and how you do it, and between what we do and how we do it, being so different, yet that affinity existing between the two companies. So, you know, taking in turn security, as you have this, that's decentralized compute. How do you ensure the security of the solutions and of the infrastructure that supports those solutions? How do you make sure you have secure compute, but also secure communications, and also a secure execution of the workloads, and secure ingress of the data, and secure storage of that data, and secure processing of that data, and how you then dispose of that data when it's no longer needed. That's a major, because that data is no longer fundamentally in one place, it's in many places. So you need to create services and capabilities to make that possible. Control, because
could you try?
Oh, that's bad. Control, because once you've got multiple workloads running in multiple locations, potentially in different geographies, then you need to have some centralized control capabilities. And again, approaching from very different domains, but Ori and Harper have created capabilities for that centralized control in a decentralized infrastructure. And finally, visibility, the ability to see what's going on, to accurately report on the state of the applications as they run over this distributed infrastructure, to bring that visibility, and to be able to act on that information, and be able to effectively, in the world of Kubernetes, to be able to schedule somewhere else when one scheduler fails, move the workload to another scheduler. The ability to have that global view of where your workloads are and how to move them across that distributed computing is, and decentralized effectively, is I think how you are effectively the risks, and how you address them, and how how we've developed our solutions to address those concerns.
Yeah, I think that's a really good concise way to describe it, by having like these three overarching kind of steps of what to look into. I don't know if you have already, but I was just envisioning like a blog or an article on that when you were talking as well. That would be helpful to kind of outline that, as you mentioned, that step-by-step process. I think it helps to be able to envision the journey, and as we touched on already, don't just jump into it. You need to assess the risks and plan ahead. And Kyle, our CTO at HarperDB, talks a lot about how to determine which technologies are correct for your product, and swapping things out, and things like that, like doing bake-offs between different technologies. And he talks a lot about how there's so much that goes into the planning process, so that when you actually go to the implementation phase, that you can try to reduce as many headaches as possible. So I think that's a good way to put it. I'm sure this is like right in your wheelhouse, because this is what you're probably helping customers with a lot right now. So it's interesting to hear that different perspective. So yeah, I think that's all really interesting about decentralized computing. Is there anything else, like in this world, in this methodology, that you want to touch on, if people are new to the concept or hesitant to adopt decentralized computing? Like any kind of final words or tips or anything you would say about that? Like, do you ever have conversations with people that are just kind of afraid of the change or anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that surprised me was how people actually, this move to public cloud, both in my previous job and then as I joined Ori, the surprise is how this, this kind of idea that everything was going to move to public cloud, and how that kind of people are realizing that public cloud has answered some problems, but has actually effectively made it even more complex. So you had your on-prem infrastructure, you had the legacy, and you had your data centers, and you had computers under here and computers under there. And then you add another dimension of public cloud. So companies who were not, SaaS native, who weren't built, in the age of public cloud, and that works for certain industries, right? They can be built. In fact, we'll talk about that in a second. So those companies who were SaaS native, no, they can kind of live on public cloud. Those companies that come from, having their own data center, their own infrastructure, they've relied on that computing, that infrastructure. Their businesses rely on it. You can't manufacture, cars on the cloud. You need that compute there next to where your robots are, where your manufacturing plants are, and so on and so forth, as an example. So what we found quite interesting is how difficult it is for people to move to public cloud, and the anxiety caused by having yet more complexity added to that complexity. You have to add the complexities of these new technologies, right? They're almost like magic, right? You talk about this Kubernetes thing and so on. It's like magic, you're the scheduler, you throw the workload at it, does everything. But it's not for everyone. They're complex. They're difficult to master. When they fail, you need quite technical staff to understand what's going on. So these companies, enterprises, now find themselves with additional, an additional set of compute resources on public cloud and new technologies that are difficult to master, for which they cannot get the technical resources to make happen. So in many ways, what I've seen is that what we call digital transformation has actually not worked in many organizations, and I think it's something that we as the technology industry have to help our other industries and colleagues in other industries to and I think in many ways that's where Ori and Harper are coming from. It's that desire to help transform other industries with our solutions. So in summary, I was surprised by the fact that digital transformation had stumbled upon the complexities of moving these businesses to the cloud, because they're not compatible with a fully cloud solution. The other funny thing is that these native SaaS solutions are actually looking for edge compute. So you now have, and in my previous job, I saw that you now have these companies were born in the age of public cloud, deploying their solutions completely on public cloud, now wanting to reach inside the telco networks so that they could deliver better experiences to their customers. And this is kind of like that full circle we kept on talking about. You have centralized, which has centralized compute, which has advantages. You have decentralized compute that has advantages. What you need is to bring those together in a way, and bring the superpowers of each.
Yeah, that's the ultimate end goal, is figuring out the perfect harmony between the two, I suppose. That's as you said, the superpower. That's where the magic happens.
It's an harmony. We may not have the perfect harmony, but if we can get the harmony with inside telco networks, you will see lots of content caching solutions for the big hyperscalers, and it's effectively fundamental that it's there. Otherwise, at home, I can't get my movies, I can't get my data, I can't get my services to work. So that's effectively decentralized compute, even on organizations that were born cloud native, effectively were born on that cloud.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jose. That has been really interesting. I know we've had several conversations, but this has still been really interesting for me, and just kind of hearing a different perspective and explanation into this world. So I'm sure anyone that's listening is probably pretty intrigued as well. So thank you for shedding some light on this. But what about, looking ahead? Is there anything exciting that we can expect from Ori next? What are you kind of focused on this year and into the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I think and yes, there's been lots of conversations between us, and each time I meet your team and the combined Harper team, there's always different angles and things I learn. And that's one of the things that excites me the most, is actually working. As part of my job, I work with a number of solution providers like Harper, and the amount of incredible innovation and incredible ideas and solutions that are coming out is by far the thing that excites me the most about the world of tomorrow. The most from our point of view, we are quite excited about some of the opportunities around private 5G. I think that this year and next we will see private 5G becoming quite ubiquitous in industry, and I think that is really exciting for companies like Harper, companies like Ori, addressing that market, which is fundamentally is unexplored at this point, because the solutions that exist are very stovepipe, and we have the opportunity to bring innovation to that area. And from a technical point of view, from Ori, this year we are starting to bring some technologies around intelligence on what are the optimal locations for citing applications in real time. So being able to say, this application should be cited on the edge, this one should be cited on public cloud, this one should be cited somewhere on multi-access edge compute, and being able to do that automatically, so that applications can become mobile. They can actually migrate across the continuum of infrastructure. That to me is kind of the holy grail. Once we create services that can expand and contract across that compute from public cloud to edge to the decentralized, once we create those services, that intelligence, then we will have created something that can really change how technology is delivered for those industries that we want to help effectively. We want to sort problems for.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, that sounds like you have got a pretty busy plate. It seems like you're always pretty busy anyway when we chat, which is good, but it seems like at least some exciting stuff that you'll be focused on coming up. And I think it's a really cool space to be in right now. People are, getting excited about it and eager to have these conversations. So hopefully that's at least, getting you through your busy days, as you said, having these interesting conversations with all these intelligent folks. That's something I love about being in this world as well. So that was a good point that you brought up. But yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much. I will be sure to put some different links in the show notes if anyone wants to follow along with Ori and see what they're up to, or connect with José. We're both here if you have any questions on anything related to edge computing, distributed computing, or as José mentioned, even 5G, things like that. So don't hesitate to ask questions. We love to connect with people, and really appreciate your time, José. This was fun.
Yes, it was fantastic. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much. Well, I will talk to you soon, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to Select Star, your resource for innovative technology and developer topics. You can find our episodes in all the usual places: Spotify, Apple, Google, RSS, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share. You can learn more about HarperDB at harperdb.io.